Whether it's floating in deep space, resting aboard the International Space Station, or orbiting the Sun, Star Trek cast members have been buried in some truly out-there spaces. No character in the Star Trek franchise is as recognized or loved by fans as the half-Vulcan, half-human Mr. Spock, portrayed by Leonard Nimoy. As detailed in Nimoy's autobiography, I Am Spock, the actor found his runaway fame difficult early on, writing, "I was overwhelmed by all the attention, overwhelmed, flattered, excited, and terrified." Seeking to draw a line between himself and the character, Nimoy wrote his first autobiography, I Am Not Spock, in 1975. The title caused an uproar among Star Trek fans, leading many to believe he hated the character. 2 decades later, Nimoy explained his true feelings about his complicated relationship with Spock in his follow-up autobiography, I Am Spock. He wrote, "I don't hate the Vulcan. If someone came up to me and said, 'You can't be Leonard Nimoy anymore, but you can be anyone else you want,' I wouldn't hesitate a beat with my answer. I'd want to be Spock."
Do you mind us still seeing you as Spock?
No, I expect it'll go on for as long as I live.
Nimoy died at the age of 83 in his Bel Air home on February 27, 2015, of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. He's buried at Hillside Memorial Park in Culver City, California. With the health and well-being of the Enterprise crew in his hands, Dr. Leonard Bones McCoy, played by DeForest Kelley, approached his duties with a fiery emotion that never failed to draw the irritation of the logical Mr. Spock.
Spock, you haven't changed a bit. You're just as warm and sociable as ever.
Prior to Star Trek, DeForest Kelley was best known for portraying villains in Hollywood westerns. Although Kelley had been typecast in bad guy roles, he was Gene Roddenberry's first choice to play the Enterprise's crotchety ship's doctor. Nonetheless, Kelley missed out on appearing in either of the Star Trek's 2 pilots. He had last joined the cast for the Corbomite maneuver, the first regular episode to be shot. On June 11, 1999, Kelley died of stomach cancer at Los Angeles' Motion Picture and Television Fund Hospital. He was 79. Kelley was cremated and his ashes were scattered over the Pacific Ocean. Canadian-born actor James Doohan will forever be remembered as the Enterprise's miracle worker, Chief Engineer Montgomery Scott. Affectionately known as Scotty, Mr. Scott saved the Enterprise crew countless times by pushing his beloved warp engines to breaking point.
"I can't change the laws of physics. I've got to have 30 minutes.
A World War II veteran, Doohan landed at Juno Beach during the D-Day invasion, where he was injured by friendly machine gun fire. Shot 6 times, Doohan took 4 bullets to his right leg and another severed his right middle finger. On July 20, 2005, Doohan died of pneumonia and complications from Alzheimer's disease at the age of 85. A portion of Doohan's cremated remains was launched into space on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket in 2012. Another portion of the actor's cremains was secretly smuggled aboard the International Space Station and laminated photocards of Doohan, hidden in the flight data file of entrepreneur and citizen astronaut Richard Garriott. With the blessing of Doohan's son Chris, who concocted the scheme, Garriott sent one card floating into space and concealed another beneath the floor cladding of the ISS's Columbus module. Lieutenant Uhura, played by Nichelle Nichols, was a constant in Star Trek the original series, hailing other space vessels on the bridge of the Enterprise. But her role was far bigger than that. Her character made history with television's first interracial kiss, and was such an important trailblazer that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. urged Nichols not to leave the show. When Nichols walked into the audition, her character didn't even have a name. It was Nichols who suggested Uhura, derived from the Swahili word for freedom. Nichols would later go on to work with NASA to recruit women and minorities into spaceflight training. She died in 2022 at the age of 89, and shortly afterwards, her remains left our planet too. Her ashes were sent into deep space to orbit the Sun, far from the influence of Earth's gravity. Anton Yelchin became part of Star Trek history in 2009 when he took on the role of Starfleet Ensign Pavel Chekhov, the Enterprise's eager Russian-born navigator in J.J. Abrams' alternate timeline reboot. A versatile actor with an eclectic list of credits, Yelchin appeared in everything from indie fare like Jim Jarmusch's moody vampire drama Only Lovers Left Alive to big-budget genre pictures like Terminator Salvation. Tragically, Yelchin was killed aged 27 on June 19, 2016, from being crushed between his vehicle and a brick pillar at his Los Angeles home. He is buried at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and his grave is marked by a life-size statue in his likeness. Mexican-born actor Ricardo Montalbán also played one of Star Trek's most compelling villains, Khan Noonien Singh, a genetically engineered tyrant from Earth's past. In the first season episode Space Seed, Kirk and company discovered Khan and his army of superhumans in suspended animation aboard a derelict late 20th century sleeper ship. Once revived, Khan attempts to take over the Enterprise, but is ultimately exiled to an uninhabited planet. Montalbán returned as Khan in the 1982 feature film Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, in which Khan hijacks a Federation starship in a bloody attempt to wreak vengeance on his old enemy James T. Kirk. Montalbán was also well known for his role as the enigmatic Mr. Rourke on the 1970s ABC drama Fantasy Island, and for appearing in a series of ads for the Chrysler Cordoba.
I request nothing beyond the thickly cushioned luxury of seats available even in soft Corinthian leather.
On January 14, 2009, 88-year-old Montalbán died in his Los Angeles home from natural causes. He is buried at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City, California. Acclaimed stage actor Mark Lenard is probably most recognizable for his role as Spock's Vulcan father, Sarek.
You embarrassed Spock this evening. Not even a mother may do that. He is a Vulcan.
He also played a Romulan in the Season 1 episode Balance of Terror. In addition to his work on Star Trek, Lenard appeared in Shakespeare plays, performed on Broadway, and was in famous films like Annie Hall. Lenard died in 1996 of a blood cancer known as multiple myeloma. He was 72 years old. His remains can be found at Hebrew Cemetery in South Haven, Michigan. Decades after his first appearance, Harcourt Fenton Harry Mudd remains one of Star Trek's most popular characters. A 23rd century grifter, conman, smuggler, and all-around scoundrel, Mudd was portrayed by character actor Roger C. Carmel in the Season 1 episode Mudd's Women. Although that episode ended with his arrest, the Enterprise crew had not seen the last of Harry Mudd. The cosmic rapscallion returned the next year as the ruler of a planet of androids in I, Mudd.
And I do the telling on this planet, Kirk, old boy. You do the listening.
Aside from Harry Mudd, Carmel's greatest claim to fame was a role on the 1967 NBC sitcom The Mothers-in-Law. Carmel continued to appear as a guest star on several comedies throughout the 70s and 80s, but by the end of his life, he was relegated to commercial work as a pitchman for Nagel's Restaurants. Carmel died in November 1986, aged just 54, at his West Hollywood condominium. The cause of death was reported as hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Carmel is buried at Mount Carmel Cemetery in Glendale, New York. Grace Lee Whitney may have appeared in just 8 episodes of Star Trek's first season, but as yeoman Janice Rand, she figured prominently into some of the show's most memorable stories. But her early exit from Star Trek is one of the most notorious controversies in the series' history. Whitney, under pressure to maintain her figure and embroiled in tumultuous relationships, turned to alcohol and diet pills. Ultimately, her struggles with substance abuse resulted in her dismissal from the series. Her character was written out of the show because her presence precluded Kirk from pursuing other romantic interests. In her memoir, The Longest Trek, Whitney describes a sexual assault she suffered at the hands of an unnamed executive as being the catalyst for her exit from Star Trek and her addiction issues. She wrote, "I tried to do what he wanted me to do so I could get it over with. I knew deep down inside that I was finished on Star Trek. At that moment, however, I didn't care about that. The only thing that mattered was getting out of that room alive." Whitney eventually overcame her demons to become a popular figure at Star Trek conventions in the 80s. She also returned for 4 Star Trek films and appeared as Rand in a 1996 episode of Star Trek Voyager. Whitney died of natural causes aged 85 at her home in Coarse Gold, California on May 1, 2015. She was cremated and her ashes are in the possession of her family. William Campbell made his Star Trek debut in the episode The Squire of Gothas playing Trelane, a powerful alien in the guise of an 18th century English dandy. He returned in the fan-favorite second season episode The Trouble with Tribbles as Klingon Commander Koloth. Campbell reprised the role in the 1994 Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode Blood Oath. Campbell's other acting credits included Elvis Presley's 1956 film debut Love Me Tender, Francis Ford Coppola's Dementia 13, and 1964's Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte. Campbell died of natural causes on April 28, 2011 at the Motion Picture and Television Hospital in California. He was 87 years old. He is interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Los Angeles. Jeffrey Hunter portrayed Christopher Pike, captain of the USS Enterprise and James T. Kirk's predecessor in Star Trek's first pilot, The Cage. Much of the footage from The Cage was incorporated into the 2-part episode The Menagerie, which elaborated on Spock's relationship with his former commanding officer and the tragic fate that befell him. Hunter appeared in a number of popular films throughout the 1950s and 60s, including the classic Howard Hawks western The Searchers. On May 26, 1969, Hunter, age 42, was found unconscious after an apparent fall in his home. He died the following day. His autopsy revealed that the actor had suffered a stroke. He is buried at Glen Haven Memorial Park in Sylmar, California. In 1977, Paramount announced plans to launch a new network and revive Star Trek. Sets were built, costumes were designed, and much of the original cast was slated to return. New characters would also join the crew, and among them was Ilia, a bald, beautiful, and highly intelligent alien portrayed by former Miss India, Persis Khambatta. Unfortunately, the network never materialized, and many of the resources for the show were poured into making the first Star Trek film. Much of the plot for 1979's Star Trek The Motion Picture would hinge on Khambatta, whose character is abducted from the Enterprise by the machine entity V'ger. After Star Trek The Motion Picture, Khambatta appeared in the 1981 Sylvester Stallone action film Nighthawks and a number of B-movies. Khambatta died of a heart attack in Mumbai, India on August 18, 1998, at just 49. She was cremated and her ashes scattered. Actor Michael Ansara played Commander Kang in the third season episode Day of the Dove, which found the Enterprise crew locked in a battle of swords against the Klingons. Ansara would return as a much older Kang on both Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Star Trek Voyager. Syrian-born Ansara was frequently cast in Native American roles during the 50s and 60s. In the 90s, Ansara lent his distinctive voice to the villain Mr. Freeze on Batman the Animated Series. The 91-year-old actor died from complications of Alzheimer's disease on July 31, 2013, at his home in Calabasas, California. He's buried at LA's Forest Lawn Memorial Park. Christopher Plummer is best remembered for playing Georg von Trapp in The Sound of Music, but in 1991, the acclaimed actor took on the role of the eye-patch-wearing Klingon General Chang in Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country.
I played this, I think the only Klingon that didn't have a hairpiece.
A longtime fan of the Star Trek universe, Plummer had been watching the series since its debut, and even called himself a Trekkie. Plummer died on February 5, 2021 at the age of 91, after a decades-long career on stage, in film, and on television. His cremated remains were entrusted to the care of his loved ones. Nobody was closer to Star Trek's creator Gene Roddenberry and his legacy than his wife, Majel Barrett. In 1964, Roddenberry cast Barrett as number 1, the calmly authoritative first officer of the Starship Enterprise in Star Trek's first pilot, The Cage. In addition to her role in the pilot, Barrett portrayed Nurse Christine Chapel in the original series and the animated Star Trek series, and later appeared in 2 Star Trek films. Fans of Star Trek The Next Generation and Star Trek Deep Space Nine will also remember Barrett as Lwaxana Troi, the meddling, outspoken mother of the Enterprise's counselor Deanna Troi. Barrett died of leukemia on December 18, 2008, at the age of 76. Her ashes and a portion of her husband's cremains were launched into deep space by Celestis Memorial Space Flights in January 2024.